Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of On the Wrist from Off the Cuff. Today we'll be reviewing the new for 2016 Orient Ray 2. So, of course, a little bit about the brand. Orient is a Japanese-based company. They're kind of, you could think of them as Seiko and Citizen's lesser-known cousin. Of course, we'll be covering a dive watch today. And some key characteristics of a dive watch is, we want to look for water resistance, normally, through a screw down crown, something tough, legible, has a dive bezel, maybe a diver's extension on the bracelet. So, all right. So in 2016, they actually released an updated version of the Orient Mako and of the Ray. I recently reviewed the Mako 2. So we're going to go over the Ray 2 today. So this actually retails for right about the same price, anywhere from about $160 to $200, depending on where you're actually, what vendor you go through. They are in kind of limited release right now, so, they're not even really posted on Orient's website. So there is a little bit of room to wiggle as far as, the street price, quote unquote. So let's take a closer look. All right, what I'll do is I'll pick up both models here so you can we can point out some of the differences and of course some of the similarities. So the 41.5 diameter case width stays the same. The 13 millimeter height also remains. As you can see, really no difference. Also still stainless steel, also still has the mineral crystal. Now, for the bezel and crown, you'll kind of notice some differences. So there is no more date pusher there. So it actually functions kind of like any normal automatic movement would function. So you just pull it out, the one stop, and then either direction. One controls the day, one controls the date. Also, the bezel now went from a 60 click to a 120 click. So nice and snappy, nice and tight, very crisp. I wouldn't really complain about the old 60 click bezel. Honestly, there is a little bit of play, but as far as the 60 click bezel goes, there's going to be more play, just because of the spacing in between the ratcheting. So of course the crown is still screw down. And similar to the Mako, the crown actually is a slightly smaller, if you can see there, if you compare them. What we'll do is, alright, you can see it's slightly smaller crown, which I think really is just to offset not having the pusher here anymore. It would look like it was a little bit oversized if it wasn't for them shrinking it down. Some things to notice also are, the teeth. The grip definitely feels sharper and better executed, as well as the crown here. So that definitely feels nicer. So the movement is the new the new Orient F69 movement, specifically the F69-22 movement. So of course we don't have a display case back, pretty much the same case back as the original Ray, which is just a solid etched case back. Similarities as far as the dial goes is it's still a sunray dial, still dark blue, still have the applied indices, still have the day-date complication, you know, same hands. Lume still glows green, really nice. Pretty much the main difference between the original ray and the new ray is the actual finish. So although both dials are matte, the actual bezel on the old ray is glossy, as you can see, versus the new matte bezel on the Ray 2. Also, I'd say the blue is a little bit brighter. I'd say it's closer more to the Mako USA blue. As you can see, the previous blue, darker, you know, a little bit, couple more hints of purple tone, versus now the more pure blue tone. Still dark, but it just catches the light a little bit nicer, which is definitely nice. And then the bracelet pretty much remains unchanged, as you can see here, which it wasn't a bad bracelet. It was considered an upgrade over the original Orient Mako. So still good. You know, push pin connecting system, micro adjust clasp, brushed solid links with polished details. You know, still has the hollow folded end links, unfortunately, and the clasp is nicely signed and has the fold over push button locking clasp all stamped. So pretty much my thoughts for this piece is, you know, the very solid improvements. It really retains that classic look, and refines the execution just a bit, just enough. On the wrist, you know, it definitely is very solid, just left exactly as it is. You know, even with the hollow end links, it definitely has that nice low profile, you know, reminiscent of the, you know, the pre-Bond Omega Seamasters. The model variants, you know, there's of course the black on black, and then the triple black, which instead of having the stainless steel, it has a PVD or DLC coating essentially. The original Ray was considered the Ray Raven, that was all blacked out, so that is another option as well now with the new movement. Comparable models, of course. You know, you could compare it to the SKX, although the SKX, you know, if you had a 007 or 009, it would have to have some mods to really spec up to this. And then also the Mako USA, of course, would draw some comparisons, but the Mako USA doesn't have the updated movement. Or also, you know, if you want the Mako 2 with the updated movement, that would also be comparable. You know, the only difference would be is, you know, kind of the look, the aesthetic, and I think the execution with the Lume, as you'll see, is a lot better on the Ray. So really, you know, kind of bottom line, you know, let's go ahead and get in for a Lume shot. So if you guys remember, if you saw my other review, the previous Mako actually had better Lume over the Mako 2, so that was pretty disappointing. But you know, I think they really got it right with the Ray 2. So the bottom line is basically, you know, the lower price point that it's able to retain, plus the improvements, really make it a solid competitor to the SKX 007 and 009. You know, honestly, the movement upgrade puts it into, you know, the SRP Turtle reissue conversation as far as competition goes. You know, really at less than half the cost of the Seiko Turtle reissue, it definitely gives you a lot of bang for buck. And then, you know, of course, the Mako / Ray line definitely have a lot of aftermarket support. You know, coin edge bezels, aftermarket sapphire options, you know, and then of course there's interchangeable OEM parts because there are so many different variants. So that's all good. And, you know, I do actually plan to review some bezel mods and sapphire mods specifically for the Mako and Ray. So make sure to stay tuned for that. In the meantime, let's go ahead and charge these bad boys up. And And let's close it with some good Lume shots. All right, so as you can see, definitely still going toe to toe Lume wise. You know, I don't really see any, you know, either of them as having, you know, an advantage or a disadvantage one over the other. Really, I'd say there's really no difference in the Lume from the Ray 1 versus the Ray 2, which is good news, because honestly, even when I compared the Mako USA to the Ray, really, I'd say there was no difference in Lume. The difference was mostly, I'd say, in the execution of the Lume and how nicely it was actually applied into those applied indices, and the level of sharpness. You know, there are some harder edges and lines on the Mako USA versus the Ray. You know, the indices are more rounded off, so it definitely, I think, in the dark doesn't have as sharp of a look to it. But, you know, I think that still a great piece. And actually, let's close with a wrist shot here, so you guys can see how this watch wears on my 7¼ inch wrist. As you can see, very nice, really smooth. Yeah, it is missing the pusher, which is surprisingly enough, as much as people complained about that pusher before, and a lot of people talked about it's the only reason why they haven't gotten the watch. Now that the pusher's gone, there's, you know, a whole nother camp of people that are actually upset that the pusher is missing. So I gotta say, wears really nicely. Let's go ahead and get the old Ray off screen here and just catch it on the wrist. Wears really comfortably, you know, doesn't feel tinny. You know, it definitely is a solid watch. I think I would prefer if the bracelet tapered a bit, you know, if it went from 22 to 18, but it tapers to 20 millimeters. So still very nice. And of course the clasp isn't quitely, I'd say, as tight fitting as a Seiko clasp. So there's a little bit more give there in the build quality, but as far as the bracelet goes, I'd say for, you know, in this price range, this is definitely a nicer bracelet than you'll find in, you know, comparative to something from Seiko. And basically you'd have to go up in price quite a bit to actually find something that was comparable. And I will be going up in price, and I'll be comparing to the new SRP Turtle. So definitely stay tuned for that. That battle is coming your way very soon. Thanks, guys. Bye.